Welcome back, geometry students. This is section 2.5, part B or part 2. We just finished working a computer designer's example, and now we're ready to move on here. It looks like they've got an example problem here with a picture to go along with it. Looks like they've got the steps listed for us to solve the problem, and we got to come up with the justification for each step. So up here I'm looking at NO on the picture is equal to NM plus N or MO. So it looks like they're adding the two smaller pieces to equal the big piece of the segment. Hopefully you recognize that from chapter 1. That's our segment addition postulate. So I'm going to abbreviate that real quick there, and that's our justification to start the problem. Now it looks like they're putting in what NO is equal to, and what NM is equal to, and then what MO is equal to. So that should be obvious, just substitution. Alright, now it looks like they added together the like terms here. So we're just going to call that simplifying. Anytime we don't have to move stuff from one side to the other when we're just combining like terms or adding or subtracting to the same side, we just call that simplifying. Now we got to figure out what they did from this step to this step, and it looks to me like they brought their x's together is the only thing that's changed. So it looks like they subtracted 4x from both sides. So I'm going to call that the subtraction property of equality. And then I got to figure out what they did from this step to this step. So it looks to me like they went ahead and moved the 9 over by adding it. So that would be the addition property of equality. And the reason why I'm putting of equality on these steps is that we're going to have some properties of congruence coming up here real soon. So I'm going to go ahead and put that of equals for of equality just to represent that. Alright, regular geometry class will be doing those problems at this time. iPad class, we're going to move on real quick here. And it looks like we do have some properties of congruence, which previously mentioned from the prior page. The reflexive property of congruence would just state that a figure A is congruent to a figure A. Notice that it's almost like the equality, except for we're dealing with some sort of figure, whether it be a triangle is congruent to another triangle, or a segment is congruent to another segment, so on and so forth. Symmetric property. Now again, we had the symmetric property of equality. Now the difference is we're dealing with some sort of figure. So the example over here is that we have angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Then we could flip it around, and angle 2 would have to be congruent to angle 1. And then we also have the transitive property of congruence again. And remember, of congruence means that we're dealing with figures. So we have if segment PQ is congruent with segment SR, and segment SR is congruent with segment XY, then segment PQ would have to be congruent with segment XY. Looks like I could maybe move that down just a touch. There we go. Looks a little bit better there now. So if you need to write those down, go ahead and pause it, write those down, so on and so forth, so you can use them in later items here. Okay, we got some examples here, which just wants us to identify the properties that justify each statement. So basically we're just going to try and name the properties down here. It looks like, notice that we got the same thing on both sides. We've got a congruence or a congruent symbol. So it's going to be a property of congruence. So I'm going to copy that down. And then if it's the same thing, we need to recognize that as the reflexive property of congruence. Okay? Now notice that we have the equal sign here, so I know that's a property of equality, so I could start with that. And which one of these flip-flops the first with the second thing? Yeah, you're absolutely correct on that. That's going to be the symmetric property. So I'm just going to abbreviate on that also. Let's see, now it looks like we've got the three statements, and it's a congruence symbol on each of these, so I know it's of congruence. And those should be probably segments all the way across here. So that's going to be the transitive property of congruence. Alright, this one it looks like we've got the equals, so I could go ahead and write of equality. And then if it's the same thing on both sides again, that's going to be the reflexive one more time. So those look to be pretty easy. Hopefully those won't cause you too much trouble. Look at your symbols, tells you whether it's of congruence, of equality, and we're going to move on here. So that's what the regular iPad or the regular geometry class would do. iPad class always has theirs already set up on the iPad to answer. Looks like there's the up one, down ones. And we're not going to do boxes with the iPad initiative class, but go ahead and pick one just for the fun of it, and let's see what you got. We'll always do our boxes at the beginning of the week for those that completed each assignment required during the week. Alright, this is Mr. Lane signing off from OHS High School. Go Cyclones!